everybody. Welcome back to Powerbombshells with Sam and Mel, two broads chatting about the wrestling we're watching. I hope you still like our cool intro and our awesome new logo. We're probably going to talk about that for a while because they're both awesome and fancy, and we're awesome and fancy.
We are awesome and fancy. It's true. True words. I look awesome and fancy in my Allison K.
That's all right. I have on a Ronald Acuna baseball shirt because that's where I wore to the wrestling show today. I was like, I'm not even wearing a wrestling shirt to wrestling. I don't care. It was going to be outside, and I was like, I don't want to wear black. I mean, I know this is blue, but it wasn't as bad. And I was like, so most of my shirts are black. So I was like, well, I'm just going to wear Ronald Acuna today because he's one of my favorite baseball players. So it'll work.
It's because all the wrestling shirts, and it's especially crazy for me. I actually have 3 dogs, and all the wrestlers go with black for their shirts, and with very few exceptions. And I'm just like,
yep, I feel you. There's always pet hair as an accessory.
It's like, so I wait until the very, very end. I do everything before I go. And
then I feel you.
Take it right to as close to the door as possible.
Yeah, I try to change. Yeah, I do that too. And then I also try to keep like a mini lint roller in my car.
Oh, I found hi everyone. This is the how to not get pet hair on your wrestling shirt before a wrestling shirt.
Yes. Listen, we come with all kinds of information. We're watching out for you. Besides reminding you to shower and wear deodorant when you go to a wrestling show. It's also important. Listen, we all know how pets are, and they like to leave hair everywhere because I have a dog and a cat, and at times I've had 4 dogs, so I understand the pet hair is inevitable.
One is sort of he's a rescue, so it wasn't like we planned on having it. He was kind of like an accidental third one. So, but we don't have children, so we have those. We have 4-legged creatures that occupy me similarly to children.
Yes, no, I feel you. Yeah, that's how my dog.
And they wrestle sometimes, which is amazing. It's the 2 younger ones will just kind of wrestle, and I'm just like, oh, hip toss. And I start calling it like a match just to keep myself amused. It's
Miley doesn't wrestle. She doesn't. I mean, because it's just her and the cat, but she's watching wrestling with us all the time. And sometimes she just looks at us and looks at me like, do you not watch anything else? Why are we watching wrestling again? But I will say, and I think I've mentioned it on here before, she likes Tanahashi. She will watch him. So if he's wearing feathers, she will watch him go all the way down the ramp, and she's always mesmerized by him, which means so she gets it.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say.
So even the dogs love Tanahashi.
She knows when.
Yeah, she knows when. But yeah, sometimes I'll look at her and her head's like this, and I'm like, Miley, you're just gonna have to get over it. That's what we're watching today.
We're all amazed by his hair too, sweet.
Yeah, it is. It is amazing. I mean,
it makes us all want to weep.
Yes, it does. He is never allowed to be in a hair versus hair match ever.
No, I don't think that. I mean,
it's
no
too
one
pure.
would want that. No. I can't think of a single person in the wrestling world that would want that to happen.
If they are, they're a terrible person.
Yeah.
Just telling you now.
Maybe Paul.
Maybe. Okay.
So you went to a wrestling show today.
I did. So I'm not a morning person at all. I'm a night owl. So I had to get up early to go to a wrestling show. They were doing PWX announced a show, which PWX, if you haven't watched this before, is my local promotion. And they did a show before the Charlotte FC game, which is our new fancy soccer team that plays at Bank of America Stadium where the Panthers play. And so literally right outside the stadium is this area where it's generally a tailgating area. And so they just put a wrestling ring there today. And they did a bunch of lucha matches. Yep, there's the card there. so we got to see some really cool stuff today. It was definitely worth getting up for. And I was joking when they first announced the show that if I was going to watch wrestling at 11 a.m., there better be mimosas. and so
I think that is a fair ask.
So I walked into, but it was sponsored by Australia, Jalisco, and I think Jose Cuervo was the other sponsor. And so I knew there would be some sort of alcoholic beverages there. And so I went to the little trailer when we got there and I was like, do you have mimosas? And she looked around. She's like, I don't have any champagne. So I ended up going with my go-to drink is the vodka cranberry. And so I went with that. And it was delicious.
Well, still, I mean, cranberry juice is totally a morning thing.
See? So. Exactly. Yeah. So I went with that at like 10:45 this morning. At that. And then later in the show, they were giving out free Jell-O shots if we posted because Goal Charlotte is who the big sponsor for the show. It's GOLCLT. And I guess they're out there, I think, every home game, and that's like one of the things they do to sponsor is they give out free Jell-O shots if you tag them on Instagram. And so I tagged them on Instagram, hashtagged it on Twitter, and I got a free shot. But actually ended up with 2 because later before the main event they still had some, and it was like the game started I think at 3:30, and by this point it was like almost 2:00. So I guess they were trying to get rid of what they had. And so my friend, it was funny because I was watching a match and some of my friends were back at the little tent thing where the table was, and they texted us and they're like, hey, they're texting me and my sister in our group chat, and they're like, we have shots at the table. And we're like,
get back here immediately.
Yeah, that's pretty much what happened. But yeah, so it was a really fun show. It was a cool atmosphere. They've done a few years ago, PWX did one. They did a show on a rooftop uptown. There was like this cool, and so that was really cool other than being really freaking hot. Obviously. Wow. So, but it was, they did it in the late, it was kind of like in the evening. Like, I think it was the 7:00 bell time. So it wasn't too bad because it got dark pretty quickly. And so it cooled off some, but it was really fun
to cool off where you are at night.
Usually, okay. But we're getting into that weird part where like, it'll get up to like 7, like almost 80 degrees.
New England, where it cools off at night in the summer.
No, it doesn't. When I say it cools
where off, they're like cool off.
Yeah, it cools off like a little bit. It gets later in the summer, like it's always joked like because we always try to take Miley on walks, and so I was like, God, it's so hot. I mean, it's like 9:00 at night and it's still hot. And then I figured out like, I'll take her to go to the bathroom at like 1:00. And I'm like, this is the perfect time to take her on a walk because it's like 70 degrees. And I was like, I'm just going to walk around my neighborhood at 1:00 in the morning because it's the coolest time to walk my dog.
So I mean, it works for us. We do like after dark walks a lot because it's just easier and people, it still blows like the alcohol thing still blows my mind. They do that here, but where I'm from in puritanical New England, that was not a thing where they like gave out shots at the grocery store or at, wrestling events or whatever thing where they have essentially the ability to give you freebies that are booze or, something. So it still like blows my mind. I remember we're like in airport somewhere near here and they were doing like Jaeger off the tap, the nitro thing. And I was like, and I'm not like an overly big fan of it, but I'm just like, I'm in, I'll try that.
Yeah.
But and I don't go crazy usually with that stuff. It's like what you guys were doing is like, that's over the time that you're doing it. And so it's it just makes sense. But
yeah,
it's still like, yay, we just giving them away. I'm like, what? Weird. I grew up where they burned witches at the stake. Sorry.
Right.
So I grew up where everything Stephen King wrote down, like all the creepy stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, there might not be the exact thing, but there's probably something like it.
Yeah. Right.
So, I kind of love that like vibe where you're out there doing that. Plus, it's fun. I mean, Who doesn't love a wrestling show?
Exactly. And it was funny because there was a guy I was next to in the little tent thing next to us, and he was like, I didn't pay that much to get in here. And he's like, and I got a free shot and a free shirt.
Yeah, right.
So I was talking to the owner afterwards, and I told him that. I was like, so apparently every show needs to be sponsored by alcohol so that you can get free shots. Because I was like, I think people will come if you give them free alcohol.
I mean, you can get a couple in there. It's not that hard. Companies love that stuff.
Yeah, that's what he said the goal was. So I was like, well, I think today was a good thing. But yeah, so the show was...
You guys test ran it for them. It worked perfect.
Yeah, it worked great. So it was a lot of fun. The opening match, which I really enjoyed. I mean, there's other good stuff, but the opening match has Revolt in it, and they are one of my favorite tag teams. They're the whole reason I got into PWX in the first place. Revolt, most of you would probably know who. Well, if you watch Impact Wrestling, then you would know who Caleb Conley is. He actually just left the company, I think 3 weeks ago. So he's no longer there, but he is
that Caleb with a K?
Yeah, he didn't. I believe he just chose not to renew his contract. I believe is what it.
A lot going on in wrestling. Right
yeah, so he. But yeah, so he and Zane are the whole reason I started coming to PWX. So I always enjoy seeing them. They're not always at PWX, so sometimes it's just a nice treat. And they wrestled the Reality, and I don't know if some of our viewers are watching DPW yet, which is Deadlock Pro Wrestling, which I've mentioned on here before, and I actually need to go back and watch the last 4 episodes. It's for free on YouTube, and it's based in North Carolina. It's in Jackson. Well, most of the shows have been filmed in Jacksonville, North Carolina, which is out near the coast. It's like 4 hours from me. But they've been doing their pay-per-views in Raleigh, and they're doing a taping next week in Raleigh. And so the Reality is Patrick Scott and Chance Riser. Also, if you watch Dynamite this week, they were security guards for Wardlow. So when they first came out, like I didn't even see Chance at first, and then he got down to the ramp, and I saw a tall, bald-headed guy with a beard, and I was like, that looks like Patrick Scott. And then my friend texted me, Patrick Scott is one of the bodyguards. And I was like, okay, thank you. And then I looked, and Chance was on the other. So they were both standing on either side of Wardlow, right? Like when he was down at the ramp. So that was cool. So I'm assuming that means that they're going to be on Dark or Elevation next week. Yeah. So they wrestle. They're so much fun. They're technically a heel. And it was funny because we were cheering for them when they came out, but then Revolt came out, and me and my sister and my friends, we were all cheering for Revolt. And he was like, they're like, what are you doing? And I was like, I mean, we love you too, but and then Chance said, it doesn't feel like it. And I was like, well, I'm sorry, but when Revolt is here, that we will always cheer for Revolt. Sorry about that. But yeah, so that was a fun opening match. What else was on here? Lucky Ali wrestled Ariel Dominguez. Ali is our PWX ITV champion. This was a non-title match. But Ariel Dominguez, I don't know if you've seen him before, but he is phenomenal. He's smaller. He's probably 5 foot tall, maybe. But he's quick, and he's really, really good. And so Lucky was playing around with his height and like got down on his knees, and he was like, let me be the same level, and was like messing with him. So it was fun. And that was another thing. I don't know why today's show was not recorded, because it was hysterical. Like everybody was just cutting up and having a good time. Like we were talking to Revolt and the Reality during the match. Yeah. And everybody was cutting up with the crowd and just really getting into it. Lucky and Ariel both were too. So it was a lot of fun just because, and it was it was a smaller, I mean, it was a decent crowd. I would say there were probably, I don't know, maybe 50 people, maybe a little bit. I can't remember, but I mean, I'm terrible at guessing numbers. I was like, it could be 1,000, and I would be like, I can't ever, I'm bad at that, but it wasn't that big, but it was still fun. They had a good turnout. What else did we have? We had Drew Adler, Stuart Snodgrass, and Jay Malachi. Jay Malachi is another guy that, if you are not familiar with him now, he's somebody that you should keep an eye on. He wrestles for DPW as well. PWX was the first place I saw him. When I saw him, I think he was 15. Oh, wow. I believe he's 17 now. This kid is a freaking prodigy. Like, we've seen what Nick Wayne can do, and they were tweeting at each other the other day, and Jay said, I'm coming for your spot. And I was like, yes, please. Well, then they announced GCW Charlotte like within a few days. So I'm really hoping we get that match on that show.
That would be a lot of fun too.
Yeah, Jay is phenomenal. Like, I can't believe, and his tag team partner, he usually tags with Jackson Drake, and Jackson is the same, like at the same age that he is, and he's also like, I think their tag team name, I have it, like I said, I think that's what they're wrestling under at DBW too, but their tag team name is Wrestling Prodigies. Because they literally
call it as it
is. Yeah, they're so good. So yeah, that was a fun match. We got let's see here. Oh, so we had Linsey Dorado came back. So it was nice to see him again. And like, if you missed the PWX show I was talking about a few months ago, Linsey was a regular at PWX years prior to WWE. Linsey was a regular, and so it's always nice to see him come back. And he wrestled Gringo Loco, which if you watch GCW, you're probably familiar with Gringo Loco. And Gringo Loco had his own show at during Mania week. I didn't get a chance to check that out, but I heard the show was really good.
Messing all around, I didn't mean to. Showing the card, and it decided that it didn't want to be a dick to me. So
well.
Of course.
Of course. But yeah, so that was a really fun match. I don't know. So Sir Rios Badu, he used to wrestle under the name. Why did I just blank on his name? Because I called him by a friend called him by his old name, and I was like, no, it's Sir Rios now. But Rios and Linsey used to be a tag team, or used to be a team with Serpentico.
Oh, and okay. Yeah.
I've heard of him. You heard of him. And so
I've heard of Linsey Dorado too.
Yes, so. And they were Los Pendejos. What's their name when they used to wrestle here? And so it was cool because it ended up. So it ended up about during the women's match, it started pouring down rain. And so it's Angelica Risk, who if you watch Dark and Elevation, you've probably seen Angelica. She's wrestled on there a handful of times. And then Brittany Jade, also, she wrestled on Elevation, I think at the beginning of April. She wrestled Red Velvet in a match that lasted like 2.5 minutes because Elevation. But so these poor girls, so it started like drizzling during, like right when they were coming out, and then just the heavens opened. And they wrestled the match in the rain. They were total pros and just kept going. And luckily nobody got injured or anything like that. And so after their match, it was still just coming down. So they paused the show for so we had already had we got a nice little intermission. That's when we got the free Jell-O shots. And then it starts raining, and like everybody's under the tents and like in the little trailer where that bar is at. And so they started passing out free shots of Jose Cuervo, which I did not drink because I cannot. Me and tequila are divorced. I cannot do tequila. I made a mistake of mixing it with moonshine one time.
Oh dear.
I mean, I had moonshine earlier in the evening, pizza and a lot of food in between.
Right.
But it was good, and nope.
It didn't work out.
No. But even still, I can't do tequila by itself either. So I was like, no, I'll pass on that. Like, I did get a free Jose Cuervo shirt though, and it's very soft. So
awesome.
Yes. So where there was a short little, I think it's maybe 20 minutes delay, and so the main event was supposed to have been Bandito versus Anthony Henry, and then the other match was Chip Day versus Sir Rios Badu. And then I guess because I believe Anthony had a match in Tennessee tonight, which starts like now as we're recording this. And so because of the delay and all of that, they swapped it. And so it ended up being that Bandito and Anthony Henry came back and had the match right when it stopped raining. That was a phenomenal match. Those two are so, like, I'm already a huge Anthony Henry fan anyway. And then, of course, I mean, who doesn't love Bandito? And and apparently from what they said, Bandito got there, his flight landed like right before the show started, or was going to land when the show started. I mean, he was main event regardless. And he was the last time he was supposed to wrestle in PWX, it was the first time that he got COVID. And so this was the first time we were able to get him back. So I think they were just determined. They're like, no, we're getting this Bandito match in. And so, it was a fantastic match. The crowd was, by that point, the crowd had grown bigger and the fans were super into that. I think that was probably as they should be. I think that was the loudest they'd been all night, was for Bandito and Anthony Henry. And so that was a really great match. And then that's when we had free shots for Chip Day, who I'm not a fan of. So I was like, we were already talking. We were like, are we just going to leave during this match? And then they're like, oh, we have free shots. But we ended up watching it from the tent, and Rios ended up getting the win. So it was nice because it was a non-title match. And so that was fun. And then so they brought out, so Rios was celebrating in the ring, and Linsey came out, and so I got a few pictures of them together, and so that was really cool because I don't know how often they get to see each other, and so I'm hoping that maybe because of the way that went out. There was also in this match, it was a really cool thing. Rios did something. He dove on the outside, and it ended up being perfect because fireworks at the stadium went off like right after.
Perfect.
Yeah, like you couldn't have timed it better. Like it was
like, look, and we get pyro.
Right. Yeah. From the stadium. Yeah. And yeah, because Chip was yelling, he turned and he got back in the ring and he was yelling at the stadium, where's my fireworks? So it was really perfect. But yeah, so I'm hoping because of things like that, maybe we get a tag match. Maybe we'll get Rios and Linsey tagging again. But it was fun. I really enjoyed the show. It was a lot of especially because it was just cool. It was a different experience to be, outside and to be, because then we had like some of the soccer fans were walking through, like on the outside of where we were at, and so they were the Miami crew, which was the Charlotte opponent tonight. They were coming through with their big like pink and blue flags, and they were chanting in Spanish, and I was like, it took me a second because I was like, those aren't the Charlotte colors. And I was like, oh, that's Miami. And so they were all hype about their team. And they were like letting us know that we know we're in Charlotte, but screw you guys.
We don't care.
But yeah, so it was a lot of fun. And I hope they do more events like that because it was really cool to see wrestling in a different, environment. And these people are like out on the pavement. I mean, they had like some mats around the ring until it rained and they got soaked. And so they moved them, but they mostly stayed on the inside. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. So hopefully they do more of that. And I loved getting to see like Bandito and Gringo Loco and Linsey and of course Anthony Henry. And so yeah, I had a good time.
Well, so ultimately it was worth getting out of bed for.
Yes, it was. Because and then I came home and ate lunch and took a nap.
Perfect. And now you're doing this. So you're an overachiever. So I am.
I'm not being a very good host. Sorry. Let's just
you're fine. I think it's good. I was like, oh, that sounds like one of the things I really like is sometimes you get like more personal moments when there's small moments where you get those things where you guys are kind of like hamming it up with the people in the ring and stuff like that. So
that was really cool too. So it was definitely. It was I guess it was more intimate, even though it was in like a parking lot. And so some of us were further back, but like when we were up close, like they were just chatting with us and like they could play off because the reality are technically hills. And they were just like, oh, that's not nice. And they were like doing things and they were like, that's not nice. And they were it was really fun. And they were playing off of each other and off the crowd, especially at the very first match out of the gate. It's 11 o'clock in the morning and we're all just kind of so right off the gate, but it was fun. So yeah, that's a really cool thing too, to be able to interact with them in that way. But like to be part of the show, but not to be the asshole who's part of the show, who tries to make himself part of the show, like that type of thing. Sides. Yeah, because we did have one of those like later on, and that was especially it was happening during Bandito versus Anthony Henry, and I was like, this is not the match to do this.
Like, guy, come on.
Yeah, I was like,
don't be that guy.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think Bandito flew in from Mexico this morning, I think is what somebody told me.
That's
so I was like, yeah.
That's definitely a working man.
Yes, it is. Definitely. Because I think that's what he did last weekend too, because he wrestled for PWG. And I think that I heard that he flew in because he wrestled, if I'm not mistaken, he wrestled at Triple Mania in Mexico Saturday night. That's and then flew into California on Sunday morning to wrestle at PWG. And I was like, that's insane. But he did. And I was like, that's a champion. But he did lose the championship to Daniel Garcia. Yes. And then because I was following along on Twitter because I don't watch because obviously with the DVDs they take forever in the shows. But yeah, and so I was following along with the hashtag, and there's one of my followers goes to a lot of the shows, and so I was just following his thread, and so I saw that, and then Takeshita, who ended up being at PWG, he challenged Daniel Garcia for the title Like that was his first PWG show ever. And then he's like, I'm coming for that title. So I was like, that must mean, I was like, they obviously must think a lot of Takeshita if they were already giving him, because, you know, PWG is very particular about the way they do things. But, you know, from what I've seen of Takeshita, they, you know, he should be involved because he's just, his match yesterday on Rampage was phenomenal. He was so good. And
yeah,
so,
that was a good Rampage.
yeah, I really enjoyed it. Good. It was weird being on at 5:30 because I was still, even though I work from home, I was still technically working. And so I was like, but we're not actually, we're not doing recaps anymore. They're trying something different because recaps weren't getting like a whole lot of views. So we're trying something different. So it was weird watching it and not like having to write and stuff like that. And I was like, what do I do with my hands? And I was like, oh, tweet. That's what I do.
Oh, I can tweet. I can tweet about it.
I can tweet about it. But then I ended up, I wrote an article about like what the biggest moment of the show and like what it means, like the biggest thing, like I guess moving forward, which was obviously the stuff, the aftermath afterwards with Best Friends and Orange Cassidy and Samoa Joe and setting up that whole thing. Cause it looks like that's probably not Orange Cassidy, Lethal versus Samoa Joe. I'm thinking is probably going to happen at Double or Nothing. And which is really cool because, you know, that's a ROH. I really like that they're giving ROH championships prominence in making them feel important, and that Tony is not just like, hey, I acquired this company and then he just lets them sit there and he doesn't do anything with them. And so he's really, I mean, obviously it's Samoa Joe and you're not just gonna not do anything with him, but I mean, I think to showcase and what's considered, you know, a TV title, and sometimes, you know, TV titles are treated as lesser. And I think that AEW has done a very good job of presenting it as something that's an important title. And so I'm really glad to see that. And I was like, and to be, if it ends up, which I assume, even if it ends up being on the buy-in, which I know people are like, oh, it's the buy-in because WWE's trained us to think that that doesn't matter. And he's like, no, I'm trying to sell the pay-per-view. So I'm going to put good matches on there. And these are important matches. Just because they're on the pre-show doesn't mean that they're any less important. And so even if that ended up being on the pre-show, you know, I think that would be great that he's giving these titles prominence. And so I hope it does get on the pay-per-view because ROH has some good people there and they have some good talent. And I'm glad that they're not just doing nothing until their next show. So,
and they're using people that, I mean, they're actually like taking into account the history as well.
Right. Yeah. Cause then that, you know,
like a bunch of, this isn't like a whole bunch of stuff he through together. There's actual.
Right. Yeah. Cause then even like when they were doing the thing with Mark Henry, Sanjay Dutt was talking about how Jay Lethal was the longest reigning, ROH TV champion, and Lethal was like, yeah, you hear that, Joe? I'm the longest reigning. So like, I like that they are playing that up with it and making it seem like, you know, such a big deal that it's not just the ROH title that Jonathan Gresham has, that it's also this world title. And now we have Mercedes there's no interim champion anymore. Mercedes Martinez is the women's champion, which I thought that was a great match. And I was really happy to see Mercedes win that match. I think she's going to be a great champion. So I like what they're doing so far with ROH, and just want them to sign Dalton Castle, damn it. I just need some more Dalton Castle in my life.
They will come.
It better. So that is it for my part of the thing. And so Mel has been listening to the Talk is Jericho with William Regal, which we talked about a few episodes ago when we did, I think this was episode 5 when we did like the mental health stuff. I think
it's around there, but it's definitely labeled on the YouTube. So if you want to go over there and check that out, you can actually look. It has the fun picture of Dax.
Yes, and so William Regal has, you know, he talked about some really heavy stuff, but then he also apparently gave a British wrestling history lesson.
A little bit of one, in so much as he ended up. So the first time when he came on, it was supposed to be to talk about, you know, all kinds of things.
Right.
And it ended up being, he started talking about his trials and tribulations that had happened during his whole medical health situation, almost losing his life multiple times. And so all these things that he didn't get a chance to talk any wrestling, really. I mean, he did, but in the context of dealing with his chronic illness.
Sure.
And such. And so Jericho had said at the end, let's do another one of these, like a part 2. And let's make sure that we get you back on here as soon as possible to talk about the stuff you were supposed to come on here and talk about.
Yeah.
And I thought that was pretty cool, but I hadn't seen it in a few weeks. And I was like, did I misunderstand him? Or was this going to come back around? Well, it finally came back around. And when it did, he started talking about, it was like, I got about 5 minutes into the podcast when I first started listening, and I'm going to have to be paying way closer attention. Like, this is a sit down and listen to it podcast. And there's a reason, which is that a friend of mine a while ago, and this, I've got to put this up here because this is like definitive of, and I'll pop it up there. But a friend of mine, one of the first things, because I like to read books, and it's a way that I download information, and I do it through Audible usually. And this one I happen to have. I got this one on my Kindle, and see this thing.
It's such a cool cover.
The Wrestling by Simon Garfield, and it is. Gosh, I meant to check when it was published. But it's like, you know how like The Squared Circle is sort of the book that everyone kind of refers to as, like, if you want to read a book that's kind of an overview of America, or, you know, North American history, there's a good one on. You know, if you want to spend like 800 or 700 pages on the entire New Japan system, read Chris Charlton's Lion's Pride. Like, I'm working on it. That's a lot. It's a lot there.
It is a lot.
This one is like, I think it's about 300 pages. And it also had relevance at the time because my friend is from the area. Like, he's Irish, but British wrestling obviously was, I mean, like, it's there. And the same TV at the time was coming from, but, you know, it was the government TV and stuff. So this was a part of later on for him because he's much younger. But there was a time in British history where it was the biggest thing ever. Like, they had their own Attitude Era.
That's what I was going to say, like the Attitude Era.
And you know, the title, The Wrestling, that's what everyone called it. And it happened during this, like, big, on Saturdays they would have, and Regal explains a lot of this. And I'm like, I don't want to spoil it. You should totally go listen to this podcast. And potentially, if you like what you hear, read this book, because they talk to all these people. Well, I just found out that Regal got to wrestle a lot of the people in this book.
Awesome.
And I was like, wait, what? So he's telling stories about wrestling with these guys and traveling with these guys. And because Britain is such a small country, and the way that you could do just when it was that big, there's a chapter in this book that essentially is like from your dear friend Margaret Thatcher. Like, this is like, that's a prime minister of Britain at the time is like writing letters to these wrestlers, and that's how big it was. And it was really just part of a thing that happened on Saturday where they did their soccer scores. And it was kind of the main. The closest I would be able to, it felt like to me, was we have the ABC's Wide World of Sports back in the day. And it actually encompassed all of the different sports and everything like that. But so from like an hour, all these guys will come on and wrestle. And it became this huge deal. And so as he was becoming a teen wrestler himself, he fell in love with all these people. So he went and started wrestling. And he, oh my God, it was, first of all, it was really cute because he was like, he told Jericho flat out, he's like, well, last time you did what they call old manning me, you like, you knew that there was something, or you at least didn't know, but you started to realize, and you kept kind of pushing me just enough where I was a blubbering mess. He's like, well, this time I'm going to talk about how I loved the heels and I loved these guys.
Right.
And how they taught me how to wrestle. And so for me, it was really fun. And one of the things I was like, I have got to make sure, because
excuse me.
There was a revolution there that where people like the first Tiger Mask wrestled.
The first one, not the 8th one.
Not the 8th one. The literal first one, Satoru Sayama, who was like Jerry. Yeah, I knew I was like, not 8.
Not
the
8.
Actual number 1, the one that can't be disputed. -8 - 7, the original Ichiban Tiger Mask. It was so great. And that one like has a weird connection because Rollerball Mark Rocco, who is someone that I don't know if you're familiar with him at all, but these are people that started to use the ropes faster, and they started to move around the ring faster. Gotcha. And they started to develop what we understand is like there is a British version, like the British strong style,
right?
Because these guys beat the crap out of each other.
Yeah.
Their original thing, and I think we talked about this in the other thing, was that you would go around and they would essentially like entice, schmoes into marks into being like, you could totally beat him up. And then, getting there and beating the crap out of them and making money off of that. And that evolved into being wrestling. And then just like here. But so the first Black Tiger was a British wrestler from British World of Sport. That was someone that Regal talks about. But I have to show you. So now this is when I'm going to give you a couple of the reveals of the 2 biggest guys. And I mean, they were huge, like in size, but also the 2 guys that like, I'm sure your region has this too. Like around here, if I mention wrestling and it's to someone over a certain age, they immediately either say Jack the Bruiser or the Sheik. Like that's the person that they remember watching on TV or they got to see at the local or whatever.
Right. Yes.
So these people are that people to like, like my friend said, I would like talk about wrestling and I saw Giant Haystacks wrestle in 9 million years ago.
Right.
So I'm going with Giant Haystacks first because Big Daddy is sort of the bigger one.
Right.
But you'll love it. Here we go. I'm sharing my screen. And I found out in the Regal tells the story of why he's wearing this particular jacket that he's wearing in here.
Awesome.
See this? So this is this guy. So that's Giant Haystacks. He was like of the 2 guys, one of the most like famous British wrestlers in World of Sport ever.
Yeah.
Apparently that gimmick with the jacket came from something that the promoter did that was really interesting story. I don't want to tell Regal stories for him.
Right.
I'm just gonna say over and over, go see that.
Yeah.
And so, but I think I told you a little bit about Big Daddy. This was the one guy. And he got to like sit and listen to these guys talk and they traveled with him.
Very cool.
So, and then I was trying to get decent pictures. I hate my thingy that opens my pictures software, but we'll deal with that on another day. Here we go. Now this was probably the biggest star on World of Sport, and he actually had an entrance where he entered to "We Shall Overcome."
Wow!
And a lot of times, like a band would play it.
Wow!
And girls
like just on regular shows, like not even
him.
Like fancy.
That was how he would enter the stadium. Like go on YouTube, you can find Big Daddy matches, and you can find him walking in. it makes you start to have the conversation about like, where did entrance music come from?
Right. Yeah.
And what that looks like, and who are the people that even gave anybody an idea. And this was one of the guys that was like, oh my gosh. Okay. This is like the best. Let's go. We're going to share it. The biggest. I know. I'm sorry it takes a little bit because I'm still getting used to these things, but here you go, folks. Right. Mr. Big Daddy himself.
Yes.
Look at this guy. And this isn't even like the best picture. It was one of the like coolest pictures I could sort of
that jacket.
Like, let me
and his top hat.
Get him a little bigger here.
That's
kind of scooch that down there. But I love this. So this singlet it evolves over time, this blue singlet that he wears, but it's very much like he comes out in this, and the jacket, all of these things start to evolve as they get older. Regal talks a lot about the things that they do with that sort of thing. And I just I'm not like one of these people who's like, read a book about this thing or whatever, but actually do, because this is like one Kendo Nagasaki, Rollerball Mark Rocco, Johnny Saint, Robbie Brookside.
Well, yes, Robbie. Yes, those are two names I'm very familiar with.
I mean, the reason that he basically came to America is because of Regal, because Regal was the first one to go to America and do work.
Wow.
And he was making a lot of money. And some of the older guys, when he would come back to Britain and do his tours there, they were starting to not feel threatened by him. They actually embraced, it seems like, to some degree, teaching him how to do it right.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I loved most about.
That's really cool. Because you would think that they would be like, how dare you take our wrestling to another country and, make money on it. So that's really cool that they.
Whereas Regal even I did a little search. I was like, I wonder if I'll find him in the book. Because I was like, now that I know what I know, I was like, he's got to have crossed over, having wrestled all these guys so many times.
Yeah.
And there's a little blurb in there, and it's where Robbie Brookside is talking about how his friend Steve Regal goes and does America.
Right.
But he says that they're really over for the British style of wrestling where they take real hits. And again, it's the kind of stuff we like, where guys just beat the crap out of each other.
Yeah, that's definitely right up our alley.
Talks great things about the way that Regal, like he was saying, how he doesn't feel like he's up to speed on, because he wasn't expecting to be an actual like in-ring talent. That all just sort of happened, and we're going with that. But in putting him back in the space where it's like, if I were to do that, Finlay would have beat the crap out of me from right behind me. If I had turned my back on him, and he would have told me, you don't turn your back on somebody, because they were so committed to the realism of the sport.
Right.
That was the era still where it was not a work.
Yeah.
I don't care if he's wearing that outfit. It's not a work. It's the truth. It's real. This is, you're actually, and they really put a lot of emphasis on, doing that sort of thing. But what is the best, what's the most like fascinating, Regal is like telling me stories about guys I've read a whole book about that I really enjoyed, and I recommend this book all the time. It was recommended to me. It's one of my favorite, like, simple intros that gives you good insight. It's basically told by the wrestlers. He interviews them individually. Awesome. There's plenty of intrigue. I believe there's a fairly recent, not like within like 5 years ago or something.
Right.
But he did go back and actually do a script, because of as things change and people get older and people pass away, people's attitudes change towards him, and he talks a little bit about how that evolved over time.
I'm sure.
He was very conscious of like where this book would sit, but it's like, you'll reach, and then you really do, like, people like like Colt Cabana.
Mm-hmm.
He loves Johnny Saint, and he loves Vic Faulkner, and he loves the British strong style of wrestling, and that's the kind of thing that, like, so where he takes some of his silly style from,
right,
it actually comes from
wow, that's interesting,
a root in, yeah, I know that because a friend reached out to him at one point and was like, tell me something about this, and Colt came back with like a list of just stuff. And
right.
these were the names that were on there. And you can find these matches on there. I think, did Rollerball get in? I was like trying to find it, but either Rollerball, yeah, I think Rollerball got into the Hall of Fame this year, thankfully, or was close. But there's a lot of these guys that aren't, and it's a damn shame.
Right.
Because if you watch a Johnny, like, go watch just any sort of standard Johnny Saint Vic Faulkner match.
Right.
And if you don't see Zack Sabre Jr. in living color right in front of you,
right,
you just aren't watching Zack Sabre Jr. right, and you aren't like, and you have no historical context at all, because it's right there.
Yeah,
It makes you like it more, or it makes me.
Yeah,
I shouldn't say you. It likes me make it like it more, because I like knowing where things came from.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And Regal,
and to see that it's still it's still relevant, like that. Those sort of things are still relevant, like in 2022, and these things are still, they're going to be relevant, and in 50 more years and things like
and
that.
They saw when people like Mark Rocco and Sayama came in to wrestle in their product,
right?
So the the long history, I guess, of excursion to the British area, but they saw, like, he recalls a conversation that essentially whereas like the old guys see that these guys are going to take us out, where they have a moment where they're like, this is going to be wrestling. This is what wrestling is turning into. And this is where it's going. And this is what's big in Japan. And this is what's going to be big next. And so they sort of see, because they're aware of the sport.
Yeah.
They're like, oh crap, like this is, but also that, I mean, that they aren't going to be the end of it. Like, it's going to continue, and that they have a big part of it, because so many of those people did go to wrestle these people that were in British World of Sport, in British wrestling. Really, because it's not just limited to World of Sport. It was the scene of wrestling was enormous. And it was crazy. Like, he just go listen to the, I think if you didn't know a single thing about any of the wrestlers that I just gave you, like, tiny little informations about, if you didn't know a single thing, this would still be a fascinating thing with it, especially because Regal over and over and over and over and over acknowledges wrestling as giving him everything. Like, he has another moment where Chris Jericho's like, I'm not the day old man yet again. But it's like he understands, especially through what he's been through, but he never stops. He's the biggest wrestling mark ever. Like, he really is, like, he is the biggest fan. He's a fan of being a wrestler. He's a fan of wrestling. He's a fan of watching other wrestlers succeed.
Which is, I think, is incredible to see. Like, we talked about it before. Like, I just don't see how you take, like, how WWE released him, and knowing that mind that he has and that knowledge, and how he scouts talent for, he was scouting talent for a while. He was going to PWG shows, and that's where a lot of these people were coming from. Like, that's where he saw Cedric Alexander, and he saw, like, all these men, and he brought him in. And then to see him be able to have that opportunity in AEW, and look at what he's already done. Like, he's handpicked Yuta Wheeler to be like, I mean, obviously he had Danielson and Moxley where he knew them and had a relationship with them, but then he saw something in Wheeler Yuta and was like, I can mold him, I can make him all of these things, or I can make him even better, and I can do all of these things and mold him into this. Like, I can't even imagine what Wheeler Yuta is going to be like, 5 years from now, 10, I mean, even a year from now, really, but
Yeah,
like just
right.
5 years from now, 10 years from now,
Especially like, I mean, just doing Best of Super Junior.
Yeah, like that's huge for him. And I think, and a year ago, like he would have, even if they were letting in, foreign wrestlers into BOSJ, like if I'm going through a list, Wheeler Yuta is not the first name that I would come up with. But now that he's in it, it makes perfect sense. And now he's going to get exposed to all these styles of wrestling, and Regal's gonna, like, I can only imagine what's gonna happen, and look at how much they've done already. They've only been together a month and they're already, and
and he unexpectedly ended up, he was not coming in for what they're using him for,
right?
He unexpectedly ended up where he is.
Yeah, that's incredible that
there's some great stories about even people like Moxley and Bryan Danielson,
I'm sure,
and stuff when they so it's not strictly limited to wrestling guys in the British scene, but he also talks about finding those guys in WWE when he made the transition over. And I mean, he kind of saw like every side of the Attitude Era and everything, and then everything, the fallout after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, talk about it, but he wants to teach you. Mm-hmm. So if you are willing to learn from him, whatever the thing is that he knows, he will teach you. And to me, that's probably what makes him one of the greatest.
And he's invaluable. Like, you can't put a price tag on that.
No.
And that's the very definition of invaluable, just to see something like that, because he has so much knowledge and experience, and the fact that he wants to share it. He wants to give it to, and then he wants to give it to people like Moxley and Danielson, who are already incredible. And, Danielson, a lot of people already consider one of the best wrestlers in the world, if not the best wrestler. And then and then of course there's, like we talked about with Yuta, and then, I'm sure there's other guys that he gives advice to. And that's incredible. And because then that keeps being able to do that, obviously it keeps wrestling going, and it keeps
having wrestling forever.
Yeah, and it keeps that old, just even the fundamentals of like what they were doing. Even if you take different variations and make it your own, the fundamentals are still there, and they're obviously a bit different. I mean, I think obviously the fundamentals are pretty much the same across the board, but the fundamentals are still a little bit different in North America and in England and Japan and Mexico and things like that. But it's something that's getting passed down, and you don't have to just be somebody in England to only, to learn. Like, you've got this man who is here, and he will teach you how to do these things. And that's incredible.
He was part of essentially a dream. Like, the dream was to have NXTs in all of the territories around that were actually drawing from local talent, not, I mean, the kind of like what we loved about NXT, that we love about the indies, that we love about watching and being able to watch so many more things. And so that was like a guy that was out there actively like, that is what I want to see. That's what I'm out there acting for. That's the future I want. I want there to be wrestling 100 more years from now. And you know what? Anybody who wants that is my friend and someone that I respect, because it's like, it's amazing and it's fun, and we get great, we get all these things out of it, and we all love wrestling. And it was like, I'm so glad. Like, it's one of these like things for, as someone who like used to teach, like it's very heartening to me. Yeah. Because gatekeeping is the dumbest thing in the world.
Yeah, it really is. Because it holds everything back.
It's stupid, and it doesn't make things better.
No,
and we're already seeing different new kinds of wrestling, and now we're crisscrossing, and we're getting Forbidden Doors and
all kinds of things, which is what fans want. Because I keep, I hear people, they're like, "Oh, well, all you're getting is dream matches." Okay. Okay.
I'm sorry.
What's wrong with that?
Why what is wrong with you're only getting dream matches?
I don't see the problem. Like, if that's what I'm paying money for, if I'm tuning in every week, yeah, sure, the storylines are great and I enjoy that. But like, I'm getting literal dream. Like we talked about a few weeks ago, we got a literal G1 match with Samoa Joe and Minoru Suzuki. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, please give me that. Like, I will tune into your show. I will.
Okay, if it's not in the tournament, I'm okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I can watch it on a Wednesday too. That does not
you're gonna give it to
me.
You're gonna give it to me for free? Okay.
Halfway through the work week, I need something to get me through.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, you're gonna give it to me because you can. All right.
I think that's like there's the hater mentality out there. I think the real all of the people that I like being around most, and people like you and I, we do. I mean, we do this every week, and we basically nerd out about this stuff because we love it and we want to share it with people. Yeah, and with each other because we both seen different versions of. Yeah, so it's cool, and you get to know new fans, and then you get to know new versions. Yeah, and
exactly.
It's so much fun. So it's like, okay, I'm with you. Like, what's the problem?
There is none. The problem is you just can't enjoy it, and that's on you because you're missing out.
You want to go let hatred and cornettery live rent-free in your brain. That's your business, friend. But
I'll take your
I'm gonna go watch Okada wrestle whoever he's wrestling next.
Speaking of, I finally watched, because it came on after Impact the other night. Well, actually, I didn't watch Impact live. I watched it on a delay.
Hyper Battle.
But yeah, Hyper Battle was coming on, and I was like, oh, I still haven't got to see Okada versus Zack Sabre Jr. I was like, I'm going to watch it now, and it was incredible. And clearly, I knew, obviously, I'm watching it a few weeks ago, so clearly Okada's going to win. Okada's probably not going to drop that title anytime soon. We've talked about that. He's probably going to hold on to it for at least a year. So I knew, but Zach still made me believe there's a small little chance that I'm wrong and that I'm going to get swerved.
I love that.
Yeah, that was an incredible match.
I love that feeling about their product. That there's still, and they've done it a few times, and and Okada's so good, and Zach is
very good. Zach's always been one of my favorite, but he's just gotten so much better, and he's getting kind of where he Okada, where he's hitting his this is probably his prime now, and he's already been this good up until this point, and it's just gonna keep getting better.
Japanese promos. Did you notice that?
Mm-hmm.
And there is, I guess, from what is out there to be read and ascertained, is that he is reaching Kenny Omega level popularity with.
And see, and I was thinking about that when he was
the
talking
Japanese
about
audience, because he stayed during the pandemic, and he was a huge advocate for the product the entire time.
Right, exactly.
Dangerous Techers has been actually one of my favorite things in the whole entire it has actually been really this George Michael thing. I have a friend we've been making the George Michael joke nonstop.
Yeah, and it was funny because I came in kind of late, or I think I missed some stuff, and I was like, wait, when did the George Michael stuff happen? Because I think it was happening during Cup stuff, and because we were behind, I missed all of this, and I was
in one of the post games.
Yeah, and he was talking about it, and I was like, because I heard him, and I was like, did he just say George Michael? And then I listened to him, and I was like, what is he on about? And it was really funny. And then I looked it up and realized this is a thing he's been doing. I was like, this is maybe a bit, but I was like, it would not surprise me if Zack Sabre Jr. literally had a dream about George Michael and decided to make it into a thing. I was like, whatever it is, whether it's, I guess, real or not, it's fantastic, and I hope he keeps that up. He's got to start coming out to George Michael's music, right? Can't they get that? They might gotta get that cleared or something.
We were talking about if Taiji Ishimori should sing "Careless Whisper." and he should come out to it, and that would be like the peak, most like amazing thing moment of all
And that's
time.
gonna happen at Wrestle Kingdom, I think. Like
So,
that's
I mean, that would be
it's gotta
something. Well, it could
happen.
happen at the crossover show.
Yeah, it could
wouldn't
happen at
break
Forbidden Door. Yeah, they
So
could make that happen.
crossover
I need it.
sounds so fancy.
Oh, all right. So I think wow, we're closing in on the hour mark, and we did it. Because I know if you watched last week, we were trying to talk about how we're trying to be more respectful of your time because we appreciate the time that you spend with us, and whether you're sitting down or have it on in the background or whatever it is, we always appreciate your time. So we were gonna try to be better about not going over so much. And then last week they were like, oh, here's BOSJ participants, and we're like, well, so much for that hour.
We're working on it. It's a process.
It's a process, and it's not going to happen every week because we're going to have probably all kinds of things to talk about, especially because BOSJ is about to start, and so we'll have all that to talk
and
about.
Most of the Owen is put together.
Yes, and then you have some news, don't you?
I mean, am I like, yeah, I'm going to Forbidden Door is the news.
Yeah. That's
I was
exciting.
able
I'm not jealous at all.
battle my way through. That is the craziest pre-sale.
I can only imagine.
I had a couple of friends telling me there were at least 900 people ahead of me in the queue. I heard of people with over 1,000.
Wow.
I had in my hands some very good, very close to the middle ring. They were down close to it, but I wasn't willing to mortgage my entire future on the price of them at the time. So but at one point I was like, what am I talking about? This is like my two favorite promotions in the whole world.
It's the first one on top of that. So even if you get to go back and say, I was at the first one. So that's a really cool, I don't care. That's a really cool thing to say.
I'm going to be in the building, and I get whatever. I've actually been talking to a lot of the Fight Game Media guys who said it's a great building and that I sat, my last WrestleMania seats were so bad, like it wouldn't even matter. It's like, it's not possible. Like, these modern arenas are really set up to not try and mess people around with that stuff.
They're not trying to screw people.
More than that, it was like, there was a whole bunch of stuff where it was like, okay, well, if this works out and I can get in the building, because we had credits from way back before the plague started that got canceled. And it was like, awesome. That's not going to be easy. I'm going to have to go in and go through. And it was actually literally waiting there like they said it was. And I was like, you know what? And I have a friend coming in from out of country who's going to be there. And then there might be some Fight Game Media people that we might get to like wave at each other. And I was like, yes, this is something. It's so close to me. It's an hour flight. It's going to take longer to like park and do all the sound crap.
Make sure you guys, it might take you longer to leave the arena.
Yeah, I mean, but it kind of all came together and it worked out, and it was
and
like,
you were just meant to be there. That's
perfect. And my husband and I get to
especially because like the pre-sale tickets sold out in like 40 minutes, which is
it was
insane. So you clearly were meant to be there, which is awesome. So I'm very excited that you're getting to go.
So
I can't wait
to
report and it's the day before. It's the day before your Rampage, right?
This is the funny thing, right? So this entire time before we wrap up, the entire time we had already bought tickets for the first Detroit show, which was on June 29th, and that had nothing to do with anything.
Oh wait, so it's the opposite. Forbidden Door is the day after, right?
So Forbidden Door is on the 26th. And then we're going to the Dynamite after.
That's what it was. Okay, yeah.
So it's the Fallout show.
Yeah, the Fallout show. Which means it's probably
hilarious because we just had those tickets all along.
And you were meant to be there.
I was like, this is so cute. It's so adorable. Like, it's just, and it's good because it'll be the first time Bob and I have been actually able to like go do human things.
Right.
And he used to live there and he's always wanted to take me there. And that's just never been able to. I was like, this is coming together far too easily.
So are you guys saying that like the whole in between those whole shows, or will you go back home like after Forbidden Door and then come back for Dynamite? are you staying in there that whole?
Oh no, we're like, because Forbidden Door is in Chicago, so we'll leave Detroit.
Oh right, Dynamite's in Detroit. What am I thinking?
So and then we'll come home on like Monday after the pay-per-view is over, and then we'll be back home. He gets a fun like extra vacation with 2 wrestling shows on it. But
I mean, it sounds like my kind of vacation.
Yeah, no, I'm like, yeah. Well, more because we're over here complaining.
Right.
I'm excited because I've been to a lot of cities and really, really fortunate myself to have been to a lot of American cities, and I've lived in multiple regions of this country, and I've gotten a good amount of travel here. And Chicago is just not one I've been able to get to before.
Yeah, I want to get back to Chicago where I actually have time to like sightsee and go to. I want to go to both, and I know they're on opposite sides and the season because they're not in town at the same time. But I want to go to a White Sox game and a Cubs game, but I know they're generally not in town at the same time and things like that. And so because we were gonna go during when I was there for All In, but it was gonna be like it was one of the off nights and it would have been like a 2-hour train ride one way and then the game. So we ended up deciding against it, but now I kind of wish we had. So I was like, well, this is just an excuse to go back. So
I love Major League Parks are a lot of fun too. I'm not a huge I like baseball. That's the thing. I do like it.
Right.
Like so I love going to Safeco. I've been to Camden Yards because I lived in that area. And so it's a lot of fun to check out other people's places.
Yeah, for sure. Yes. All right, so I guess since we're at the hour and 5-minute mark, maybe we should wrap this up. Since we just talked about how we're going to respect your time. But but we had to talk about Mel going to Forbidden Door because that's exciting news. And so I'm excited about
that. It's cool. I'm so excited. It's going to be a lot of fun. You get your GCW shows. I get all that.
Can't wait for that. So that's exciting.
And we'll always have, we still have stuff to talk about until ever.
Yeah. So. Definitely. So we will we filmed this early. I think it'll still be out on its regular day on Sunday, but maybe it'll come out on Saturday night. I don't know. So we might be this might be in the future.
But happy Mother's Day to all you mothers out there.
Yes. Happy Mother's Day. Hope you enjoy your day and that it's wonderful. And we will be back next week with more things to talk about. I don't know what we're talking about yet because we aren't that far ahead, but if there's any dumb quotes that we need to address, we'll do that. Otherwise, maybe we'll talk about who we think the Joker is or something like that. That'll be
a good one.
Yeah. Because I posted on Twitter and not one of you responded. Not one of you responded and told me who you thought the Joker was going to be. For shame.
I'm going to assume it's because everyone was getting ready for Mother's Day.
Probably.
I'm going to say.
Probably.
So, now that you're finished with your Mother's Day plans,
come get on our Twitter page and answer my damn question.
That's right. That's a perfect place to leave it.
Yeah. So she will pop up the things again, I guess, real quick. So you can come answer my damn question.
That's a good call.
Of course, make sure that you're subscribed to
Fight Game Media. Or was it on yours?
Right there. Come follow Powerbombshells. That's where I pose the question. So I will pose it again.
Right.
And
warned people.
Yes, and like I said, make sure you're following Fight Game Media on YouTube so that you know when there's new episodes. And like I said, there's always good content on there. People are always working hard to provide you some free content. So come check it out over there. And thanks for hanging with us, and thank you for your time. And we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.